Just a couple of questions, Peter, if you can confirm these for me. Following up on Councillor Madero's question. Following up on Councillor Madero's question about who is a registered third party. And you said that the originator's name would be known. So if you've got a numbered company, a numbered organization, how does that show when the advertising comes out for that? Does that show the person's individual name under the registered company? Because I don't think that name is available any other way in any other circumstance.
So through you, Madam Chair, so the requirements of the Municipal Election Act speak to for signed content to be the name of the registered third party.
Right.
The municipality where they're registered and telephone number, mailing address, or email at which the third party can be contacted.
Right, so it doesn't identify the individual who may have started or got the name, for example, for that third party.
It may not at this point. I will say that the province is still has to issue some prescribed forms, and particularly in terms of the third-party registration. So that may be information that is included on that. So, for example, hypothetically, if it's a numbered company, there may be additional information that may need to be included on the registration form to provide more particular details. Because the purpose of this is on transparency. So one would presume that more than a numbered company would be the type of information that people would like to know about who that registered third party is. But we're still awaiting those prescribed forms for registration.
Okay, so we're in essence being asked to vote on this today or to refer it without even knowing what the province is prescribing.
Through you, Madam Chair, these are recommended amendments to the sign bylaw amendment that we're recommending. There are 95% of the Election Act procedure and process as it relates to third parties has been proclaimed in legislation, so we know most of it, but there's still a few pieces that we have to wait for. In my view, the recommendations before you are matters that are not dependent on waiting for additional information from the province. Otherwise, we wouldn't have brought them forward.
Okay, because I think it's pretty important to know who's putting up the signs myself. I don't know about the rest of the council. I can't speak for them. The other question I have is in regards to budgets. Do we know how much a third party has to spend on their signs and advertising campaign yet?
So, through you, Madam Chair, in fact, just past Friday, the province released a draft regulation in relation to a few aspects of the Municipal Election Act, and one did speak to third-party advertising expenditure limits. And it essentially set out, and this is subject for consultation back to the ministry, $5,000 for a registered third party, plus 5 cents per elector to a maximum of $25,000.
Okay,
and that's in the proposed regulation.
So, would that be applied to if that third party is running in a particular ward, for example? Do they, well, I'm not running or campaigning against. Does that include if they want to campaign against somebody in Ward 910 and in Ward 7 and 8? They want to campaign against 3 different people. Is their budget 3 times that now for each ward? Or do they get the same allotment as a candidate would for each ward?
No, it is not. A third party is registered at the municipal level, not at the ward level. So the $25,000 maximum would apply across the municipality, as we understand the draft regulation today.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gibson.
Madam Chair, I'll move referral now of item third part, number 3, back to staff for more clarity on what our existing bylaw covers now. I think the clerk wants to speak though, before you take that.
Okay.
So through you, Madam Chair, just to provide more clarification, and Shanika provided me with the right information in case I didn't misspeak. The structure of the sign bylaw and the way that election signs are defined in the sign bylaw basically excludes any other kind of election sign other than a sign that essentially is 2 by 2, I think, square meters. essentially a lawn sign. So for example, a third party, if they wish to register and then take out a billboard sign related to an election sign under the sign bylaw is very restrictive. And it's essentially a lawn sign, so it wouldn't be allowed. So the sign bylaw today, and with these recommended proposed amendments, would still only allow election-related signs by candidates and by registered third parties as it relates to essentially a lawn sign, not a third-party advertising, which could be a billboard or some other signs like a commercial sign and things like that are already regulated under the sign bylaw, and an election-related sign or election-related content is not something that is permitted under the sign bylaw. So I just want to make sure that's clear. So it's just election-related signs that really relates to lawn signs.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's clear, so maybe I think I better refer this portion back to get more clarity from staff on what is covered now, what isn't covered, and if we didn't want to allow them, what would we need to do? Okay, hope that's clear. I didn't want to stop anybody from speaking, so I don't think Councillor Dillon spoke. If you want to speak before you put my referral motion on the floor.
I just wanted to say support the referral.
Okay. Councillor Fortini?
Thank you. To Peter, does a third party have to live in the municipality just like a candidate, or rent, own, or something? Or they could be from anywhere?
Third party does not have to live in the municipality.
Doesn't have to live or rent. And do they have to do financial statement just like us, or candidates? Or and if they don't, do they get eliminated at the next election and they're allowed to advertise as a third party?
Through you, Madam Chair, they do have to file financial statements similar to candidates within prescribed timelines. And I'm not certain in terms of the penalty, should they not file.
Well, they get special treatments. Thank you.
Councillor Sprovieri?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Peter, just to get a bit more understanding on this third party. So who can be a third party? Is there any regulation who can be a third party?
The Municipal Election Act today defines a third party as an individual, a corporation, or a trade union that is registered. And I should point out that really is registered to direct advertising for or against a particular candidate or candidates, or in opposition or in favor of a question, should there be a question on the municipal ballot. The Act is clear that if a third party is doing advertising that is essentially free of charge, and at the municipal clerk level that's being interpreted to be social media, there is no need for registration.
Okay, and so you did say that individuals are also permitted?
An individual can be a registered third party, yes.
And what about developers or builders and the various businesses?
They would be corporations.
Okay, and so a third party can either support or oppose or advertise against or for candidates, you said.
That's correct.
Yeah, so what kind of, if they were to advertise for opposition, what kind of, are they able to dig up dirt and start throwing it around on the candidate? Is that permitted?
Through you, Madam Chair, other than the registered third party identifying who they are and some contact information, the sign bylaw doesn't regulate content, nor does it regulate content in terms of candidate signs.
Okay. And how many third parties can there be for that can either support or oppose a candidate? How many third parties can there be? Is there a limit?
There are no limits.
There are no limits. So I could have 10 third parties spending $5,000 for me, or up 20 or 25 or for or against.
That's correct.
Oh wow, that's that's quite an interesting. I mean, I don't know who came up with that, and I don't know why. Do you have any ideas who have come up with this? Yeah, but
It is regulated today at the provincial and federal level in terms of third-party advertising.
Yeah.
It has not been included in the Municipal Elections Act until now, and I believe there were instances in the 2014 election, I believe maybe in Guelph and Toronto, where there were issues with third-party advertising. And I think perhaps, if I could speculate, one of the reasons why this was put in the act is because it led to questions about whether or not a third party, one, is in fact contributing to a campaign of a candidate or not. So this provides further clarity in terms of transparency, that there's boundaries. There's candidates and there's registered third parties.
okay, thank you. Sounds going to be fun.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you. Peter, are you going to report back so we can have a fulsome discussion on the third party in terms of understanding it? Because, for example, can a corporation contribute to more than one third party advertiser? So can if I was a third party advertiser, could I register in wards 1 and 5, 7 and 8, 9 and 10, citywide, and does my limit then, well, I mean, you could change your name as a third-party advertiser and essentially triple, quadruple the amount of money that represents the limit. I don't need an answer right now, but I do need to understand. I think anybody who wants to be a candidate in the next election needs to understand what third-party advertising, what the rules are for them as well as for the candidate themselves. That's a separate issue. On the referral, what I'd like to see is, and Councillor Gibson asked the question of whether or not you could have a separate bylaw for third party. Because I think there's something, well, there's still election related. I think that there's a difference between a candidate and the third party advertisers. So in terms of a bylaw that defines what is third party, I don't see putting them in the same bag. I see them as a separate beast. Thank you.